This morning, along with our theme of faith, hope, and love, and as we were specifically looking at the topic of hope, we talked about how to draw nearer to God, and that it's a very convicting thing to think that not only can you draw near to God, but God expects it, and He makes that way available. But there requires for us to be extremely dedicated to that endeavor. And it's not one that can be faked. It's not one that we can just put up some kind of a front because God sees us and God knows us. And obviously, one of the ways in which we take advantage of an opportunity to draw near to God is when, as Bobby mentioned a moment ago, coming into the presence of God and worshiping Him. But worship is not always what it needs to be. I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord." And as was mentioned by Matt a moment ago, it's one of the Psalms of Ascent. It said it's time to go and make one of these pilgrimages to Jerusalem. But the idea of going to Jerusalem and seeing a city that's built the way it was, that was compact, that would have hundreds of thousands of people in it, and knowing that everybody had come from all these different tribes of all these different areas in order to worship together and encourage one another in their dedication to God, would have been a splendid event. And so tonight what we're going to look at is, through this song, we're going to see what is the heart of a worshiper. What does it mean to look from period to period between those worship periods, and how a deep-rooted longing can really be a benefit, not just to us, but to all those who are around us as well. And so if you're ready for your 3 words, let me see your notebooks. All right, here's 3 words, and you're going to notice that these 3 words are used throughout this psalm. So if you're there in Psalm 84, we're going to go through a few verses just as a preliminary to point out these 3 words. The words tonight are courts, altars, and doors, because what this psalm is about, and the theme of this psalm, is all about the house of God, or the tabernacle. Most likely this was Solomon's temple at the time, as tabernacle just means a building for the Lord in this context. In verse 1, he mentions the tabernacle. In verse 2, he mentions the courts of the Lord. In verse 3, he mentions the altars of the Lord. In verse 4, he mentions your house. In verse 5, he says God who is in Zion. And in verse 10, he mentions your courts. He uses all 3 of these words throughout this psalm to talk about how these are emblems and symbols. These are useful instruments, and these are visual images in his mind of what it was like when you went into the house of God and what would be taking place there. If you look at the beginning of this psalm, though, this is a psalm that was said to be sung by some of the sons of Korah. And if you remember the sons of Korah, that Korah was one who actually led a rebellion against Moses and Aaron. That he was one who was a descendant of Levi, and he had certain duties that he was supposed to perform in the service of God, especially when it came to the tabernacle. However, Moses says in Numbers chapter 16 that he would view these things as a small thing or a common thing, a little thing. So little that it's not enough to satisfy you, and you find no fulfillment in it, so you're looking elsewhere for something else to fulfill you, namely the role that was given to Moses and to Aaron. What's significant about that is that Korah was destroyed because of his rebellion, but his sons did not continue in that tradition. And there's about 11 different psalms that are attributed to the sons of Korah, and they're all about this idea of praising God and the service that they would perform. And so what you'll also notice is that when you go through the Old Testament, you'll see that the sons of Korah had different duties that they had within the temple. One of the duties that they had was to be a doorkeeper, or someone who stood at the threshold. That's going to play an important role in this psalm as well. They had several duties that they were performing, but they were not always performing those duties. It would be that they may have a duty at this particular time of the year, but the other 2 pilgrimages, they may not do that again until something else the next year because of the others that may be participating in those things. And what this particular writer is saying is that I want more. I want to be able to do. I don't want to leave. I want to be able to stay. And he's actually going to talk about jealousy and things that he wants so badly, but he's not able to have. And so what I want us to think about tonight as we consider this idea of drawing near to God is, how do you view worship? Specifically, coming to worship. About this time last year, we had lockdowns. And there were some people around the country who were not allowed to leave their home to go and worship publicly. That even we, when we were in Richardson, there was a time where we were only allowed to have 10 people assemble for worship, and people were staying home. How did that make you feel? Not being able to be with others when you worship. For some people, because they've just now been able to get a vaccine and these things seem to be dying down, there's several Christians that this is the first time in over a year they've been able to come into a public assembly and worship. And that's been something that a lot of them have really looked forward to. How did it affect you? Was it something that you longed for? If you're sick during the week and you miss, let's say, Wednesday night, does it throw off the rest of the week that you don't even know what day it is now? Because you're used to just being there. That's what your week is fashioned after. When it comes to your family, is it something where you have a discussion about whether or not you're going to go to worship? Or is that just a common, ordinary thing that is taken for granted that you're going to do regardless? It doesn't matter. You're going to come and worship God. See, this lesson is not going to be about trying to whip anyone into the idea that you have to come to worship. Unfortunately, that is the way it is for some people. They have to be made to feel guilty before they maybe will attend worship services. That's not what this lesson is going to be about. What it is about, though, is about how do we develop an appetite for it, a real desire for it, that I want to, I yearn. And those times between worship are times where I can't wait until the day comes again that we get to gather together and worship. That's what this particular psalm is about. So let's begin in Psalm 84 and verse 1. Psalm 84 and verse 1, here the psalmist says, "How lovely is your tabernacle, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, yes, even faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out." Some of the versions say, "Sing for joy for the living God. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young. Even your altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They will still be praising." And so one of the things that we see from the very beginning is he talks about this longing that he has to be in the courts of the Lord. And this was somebody who would have some type of duty or service that he was supposed to be rendering. And yet he was longing for these courts. He mentions that you'd be able to see the birds. And notice that he is jealous of the birds. That these birds are able to fly into the courtyard of the Lord and even fly onto the altar of God. Birds are able to light upon the altar of God, build their nests there, and have their young be born there. Birds can do it, but men cannot. And he has a jealousy for that particular thing. When we think about how the tabernacle is a semblance of what the New Testament church was going to be, brother, this is something that we enjoy all of the time, is that it's not just when we come together such as this that we're in the presence of God, but we are always in the courts of our God. That our young are born within the walls of the kingdom, as it were. They can grow up here and never have to leave. And that's a blessed thing. As I said this morning, it is really good and really important for us to be able to look back and see the kind of people we used to be before we became Christians. But brethren, it's even better when we're able to say, yes, but this is who I would be if I were not a Christian. It's one thing to look back and realize what you've escaped, but it's even better to appreciate what you have not become because you are a Christian. And even better still to realize what you are because you are a Christian. This person longed for the courts of the Lord, and when he saw the birds flying in and out of that place, it was something that was beautiful in his sight, just as the tabernacle itself was beautiful. In Revelation 19 and verse 8, it is mentioning how the bride was being prepared for her husband, the Lamb. And in verse 8 of Revelation chapter 19, it says that the righteous deeds of the saints, that this is the linen that this bride is adorned in, is the righteous deeds of the saints. And so just as it is that he would be able to see the altars and all these different symbols of what it meant to be in the temple of God, when we come together and we see and hear of the good things that we have done, brethren, that's something that adorns the very apparel of our Lord's bride, and something that we should take pride in as well. In 1 Corinthians 3 and verse 16, we know this, and Nathan actually talked about it in his class a few weeks ago, that sometimes when it talks about us being the temple, it's not just talking about us as far as our individual bodies as it does in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, but in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, it's talking about us as the Lord's church are his temple as well. And these are precious moments that a lot of people don't get to enjoy. Unfortunately, like it is in Malachi chapter 1 and verse 13, there are those that when they would bring their sacrifices to God, instead of seeing this as a glorious occasion and one to look forward to and one that they were wanting so very badly, they would sneer at it, profane it. And in verse 13 of Malachi chapter 1, oh, what a weariness it is to go to the house of the Lord. So I don't get the impression that when this person went to do his service in the Lord's court, and when he was worshiping there and doing his duty, I don't think he was doing this and wondering when he was going to get done so he could go back home. I don't see him as someone who was bored while he was there and thinking, well, we've done this before, I'm used to this. But it was something that actually meant something to him. Drawing close to God, drawing near to him and finding hope in worship is realizing how beautiful this is. It's sad that for some of us it may take losing it before we realize how precious and great it is. And that last year there were many who experienced that. And over the past year many of you have suffered through that. Thanks be to God that we have those moments back. That we're able to actually hear one another's voices, to see one another's faces, to be able to recognize one another's faces, and to see smiles again. Praise be to God that we're getting that behind us. These are the moments that we long for. These are the moments that we desire and look forward to. These are the moments that make our children realize that it's not a game to us. This is who we are. It's not just something we do. This is who we are. And it's a tremendous blessing. In the next few verses 5 through 9, as he continues to talk about this, he says, starting at verse 5, blessed is the man whose strength is in you, whose heart is set on pilgrimage. As they pass through the Valley of Baku, they make it a spring. The rain also covers it with pools. They go from strength to strength. Each one appears before God in Zion. O Lord God of hosts, hear my prayer. Give ear, O God of Jacob. Just as it was that he talked about this idea of longing and having a jealousy even for the birds, it is about, as I said, building an appetite. Fathers, we know that one of the jobs that we have is to bring our children up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. What that means is that when we're bringing them up, we bring them up with the nourishment that God gives. They're not going to eat that if it all tastes like bland spinach, right? We know that from trying to feed a child. That child will spit that thing out. And so when your children are being raised to respect and want the things of God, it's about developing an appetite for those things. It's not about force feeding them. It's about developing an appetite for it. When it comes to worship, it's about developing an appetite for this worship. And these verses describe why that is. That when they are making this pilgrimage, as it says at the end of verse 5, whose heart is set on pilgrimage. There are some of your versions, they may have that their eye is upon the highway or something very similar to that. What this is talking about is knowing that there's these 3 times a year that this is going to happen. And I am always looking forward to that. That in between these times of pilgrimage, that's where my mind is at. That's where my heart is at. So in between our time periods during the week, interesting, we have about 3 times a week that we meet. Maybe that's a coincidence, maybe not, I don't know. But when we have those times, the time periods in between that, is that where my heart is at? Where my mind is at? Or is Sundays and Wednesdays a distraction from the rest of the week? And my heart is really set upon my work, or my heart is really set upon my home, my heart is really set upon whatever form of entertainment or whatever it is that I've got my heart set on. This man's heart was set on pilgrimage. I'm looking forward to that time. There are those in the house of God, such as the priests that he mentioned earlier when he says they are always singing that praise. They never have to leave, but he does. And he doesn't like that. He says that along the way they go through this place called Baku in verse 6, the Valley of Baku. You probably have a footnote that says the Valley of Weeping. It's not known whether or not this was an actual place or it's being used as a metaphor. But it talks about this Valley of Weeping. But notice that as they go through the Valley of Weeping, it doesn't say that it becomes a place of blessing, that it becomes a spring, but that they make it a spring. That as they're passing through these valleys where there's sadness and where there's weeping and where there's mourning, that when these pilgrims of God come through, they make it like a spring. They make it like a place that's full of pools of refreshing. See, what worship does is it takes something that is like thirst and gives refreshing. It takes something like weeping and turns it into rejoicing. Our lives are meant to be shining lights and great examples of who our God is. And because of our nearness of God, that has a natural effect upon other people. Are we the kind of people that walk around that others want to know the same God that we serve? Or do they think that serving our God does nothing for us whatsoever? We're meant to be blessings. In Philippians 2, verses 15 and 16, remember that Paul said that we're supposed to be able to do all things without murmuring and disputing. And that we're supposed to walk through this world shining as lights in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, holding forth that word of life to others that they may see it. That's who we are. And as we're traveling through this land from time of worship to time of worship, it makes a difference in our life and in the life of others. Notice also that as he continues in those passages, it's not that it just makes a difference between that, but he says in verse 7 that they go from strength to strength. There's a source of constant renewal. Strength to strength. There's a few different ways in which it could be understood. One is that when they would go upon the pilgrimage and they would go to Jerusalem, it gave them a sense of strength, because Jerusalem and the temple was a place where God's presence was supposed to be. It represented God being there in their midst, and they were never any closer to God and in closer fellowship with God than when they were there. But when they would go back home, that would be a time where it was dry and thirsty and that it was very, very difficult to make it through. But then you'd come back again and you'd regain that strength. And so from strength to strength, they may be being constantly renewed. You feel that way? You come Sunday, you sing songs, you say prayers, you embrace your brethren, you get encouraged that no matter what Satan throws at you this week, brother, you can do it. Sister, you can make it through that. And then you're hit with Monday morning. And then Tuesday night comes along and you get a phone call. And Wednesday comes up and your boss says, you know what, you may have to work late tonight. Does it upset you, or do you say, I hope not, because the brethren are coming together to study Wednesday and I need that? There have been times where you've been so beat down that you didn't want to come Wednesday or Sunday night or Sunday at all. I mean, I've been there. I'm sure most of you have as well. That's the wrong attitude, though. This is where we get strength. This is where we get renewal. This is where we find refreshment. And we move from strength to strength in that very fashion. As I said a moment ago, it's not about being beat up and made to feel guilty when these times happen. But we need to get rid of, as it seems to be going through our society now, a one-and-done type of mentality. That so long as I come together and I take the Lord's Supper, that's all God really expects of me throughout the week. One and done. It's sad. And I don't think I would be able to find much strength from that. I don't know that it's strengthened a lot of brethren, as it seems that we're getting less and less opportunities afforded to us by some to even assemble. I don't think that's what the sons of Korah wanted. I think he was wanting more and never wanting to leave the presence of God. We're told in 1 Corinthians chapters 11 through 14 that in chapter 11 of 1 Corinthians, you know that he starts talking about around verse 17 and 18 or so about the Lord's Supper, and how it is that some were being excluded from taking the Lord's Supper, not afforded an opportunity to. That people were taking their meal ahead of others and excluding them from that. But he also said that the ones who were actually eating it weren't eating it with the right frame of mind. They weren't discerning the Lord's body and blood as they were partaking. And he says that it's for this reason that many are weak and sick, and some have died. And I believe, spiritually speaking, that's what he's talking about, because they weren't taking advantage of what they saw when they came into the Lord's assembly with his people. In chapter 12, he says how it was that they were arguing and fussing with each other about which spiritual gift was better, but they had forgotten that it was supposed to be for the edification of everyone, and that there's no member of the body that's not essential, that all are essential. In chapter 13, he says this is the solution to your problem. It's not more spiritual gifts, it's love. Loving each other correctly, because you can do all sorts of things, but if you don't have love for one another, it means nothing. So in chapter 14, he tells them how to start using these gifts correctly. And he says about verse 26 of chapter 14, let all things be done for edification. That when we come, we have a purpose, not just in our purpose in coming into the presence of God, but also coming into the presence of one another and edifying and encouraging one another. From strength to strength, we gain these things. And these things help us to grow closer to our God as well. And so we need to bear them in mind. It's too often that the hardships that we encounter in life that really are nothing more than inconveniences, really, will cause us choose not to worship our God. But these are people that bless others no matter where they go. And the reason being is because worship is something that imparts strength to each of us. Then the conclusion of this psalm, verses 9 through 12. O God, behold our shield, and look upon the face of your anointed. For a day in your courts is better than 1,000. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold from those who walk uprightly. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the man who trusts in you. In verse 8, he had mentioned that he's talking to the God of Jacob. And if you remember that Jacob becomes familiar to us because he's the one who wrestled with God. And it may very well be that the reason that he refers to him as the God of Jacob is to refer to this idea of wrestling, because he wrestled with God until he received a blessing. And this person is praying to God and saying to God, God, please listen to my prayer. Listen to what it is that I'm saying to you. Look upon our shield. Look what we have to defend ourselves. Without you and outside of your presence, it means nothing, because you are our shield. You are our light. It may be that what he's referring to is not a shield from trouble, but a shield from the heat of the day and the things that will exhaust you. It may be actually the idea of a shade more than anything else. That when we're in darkness and don't know where to go, God is a light to us. He is a sun to us. When we're in the heat of the day and we may be struck down by it because of exhaustion, God is a shield or a shade to us. Without God, we would not make it. So God listened to my prayer. He said that one day in the house of God is better and more important than what we could do in 1,000 days outside of it. Brethren, what we accomplish in one day, in one short hour of worshiping our God, is more than you will accomplish in a lifetime doing other things. If we had that type of respect, if we had that type of devotion, if we had that type of love, if we had that type of affection, would we be losing 60% of our young people? Would the things of the world be invading the church the way that they are? God, look upon our shield. What do we have to defend ourselves? What do we have to protect ourselves? It is only you. A doorkeeper? Was that looked upon as being one of the least of all the duties that a person could perform? Better is a day doing that in the service of our God than 1,000 in the pleasure and in the blessings and in the company of those who have prestige and honor and comfort in the world. I would rather be here than anywhere else on the face of the earth right now. Is that how I worship? Is that the way that I approach coming into God's presence? And brethren, being with you, is that how special it is to me? See, it's not a matter of do I have to go? Because that's usually asking the wrong question. do I get to go? It's like making homemade ice cream on a hot summer day and setting it down in front of someone and them saying, do I have to eat this? Why would you ask that? And worship, brethren, is the same way. Do you have to worship? No, you don't. You don't have to do anything. You don't. But brethren, you get to. You are blessed with that. We're blessed with a country that gives us that freedom. We're blessed with a state that said that you can't lock us down anymore. We're blessed. Let's take advantage of it as much as we possibly can. Because, brethren, one day doing this is more special, and you will accomplish more in this hour than you will the rest of the week, doing whatever else you're going to do, because you are with your God, and He is your shield, He is your sun, and He is your shade. So in Hebrews 10, 24 and 25, when it tells us that we are to consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, that we don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together, as is the habit of some, but we look forward to this day, whether it be this day or that day that's way out there. We look forward to it. But again, it's not to hold this over our heads to say you have to make it to services. But it's this idea of why do we do that? Apply that verse, married couples, apply that verse to your marriage. Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. What if husbands and wives had that attitude toward one another in the home? You're both Christians, aren't you? That's what it means. You got a brother or sister that you know is downtrodden, is going through hardship and difficulty. That's somebody that we're supposed to talk to be around, and try to be with each other, to stir one another up to love and good works. Because again, one day in the service of God is better than 1,000 in other places. In Hebrews chapter 11, verses 24 through 26, this is a choice that people make constantly. As it says about Moses himself, that he chose rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin for a season. That's what we do when we choose. We make a choice. Who do we want to be? Do I want to be even a lowly doorkeeper in the house of my God? Or do I want to spend 1,000 days in the tents of the wicked? Moses chose to be with his God. What will I choose? That's what this psalm is about. And how can a man not be blessed? As he says at the very end of this, as he gives the why behind these things. In verse 11, at the end of verse 11, the Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will He withhold from those who walk uprightly, and so it should flow naturally from His lips. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the man who trusts in You. And so the question I'm going to leave with you tonight is this one, is that when you think about this time of coming together to worship, is it a time of refreshing for you, or are there things that you would rather be doing right now? Are there other things occupying your mind? Today has been about trying to find ways to draw closer to God, not just in our everyday actions, but also in our worship and the way in which we approach it. Psalm 84 is a really good one because this is a person whose ancestor had considered this to be a small, meaningless thing, but they did not follow in the ways of their father. They changed that because they chose for themselves who they wanted to serve, and they developed an appetite for it. So that's what I challenge you to do, is to look for ways in which you can develop that appetite as well. If you're not a Christian tonight and you desire to be one, if you want to be called by the name that God has given to us, if you want to have the blood of Jesus Christ wash away your sins, if you're ready to confess before this audience that you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, if you need to come back to God because you've been wandering and straying from Him and you need help in drawing closer to Him, let us know that as we stand and sing if we can help you.